Some questions don't have answers. Some stories cannot be explained. Some experiences change everything. Welcome to the Anything and Everything Spiritual Podcast, where we dive into anything and everything that is spiritual. Have you ever wondered why Spirit doesn't just come straight out and tell us something? Why don't they just tell us who's going to win the lottery? Or give us the lotto numbers? Or who we're going to marry? Whether we should leave our job? Or exactly what's going to happen next Tuesday at 2:00? It's a question I have been asked hundreds of times over the years. And today, I want to share my thoughts on it. Not because I have all the answers. I don't. But after thousands of readings, countless demonstrations, and years of working with Spirit, there are some things I have noticed. And one of the biggest is this. Spirit seems far more interested in our growth than our convenience. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Anything and Everything Spiritual Podcast, where no topic is off limits and every conversation is an invitation to think a little deeper. Today's episode is one I have wanted to record for a while because it comes up in almost every workshop I facilitate. Someone will always put their hand up and ask, if Spirit knows everything, why don't they just tell us everything? And do you know what? It is a fair question. In fact, if you have ever had a reading, you have probably left thinking, I wish I had have asked this. Or, why didn't they tell me that this was going to happen? The truth is, I've asked myself the very same questions over the years. And what I've come to believe may not be what people expect. One of the biggest misconceptions people have is that Spirit's job is to become your personal GPS. Turn left. Don't marry him. Take that job. Buy that house. Don't go there tomorrow. Now, wouldn't life be easier? Maybe. But would we actually grow? I'm not so sure. Think about your life for a moment. Some of your greatest lessons, your greatest resilience, your greatest transformations did not come because somebody handed you the answer. They came because you had to figure it out. Sometimes painfully, sometimes reluctantly, sometimes kicking and screaming, and yet those are often the experiences that shape us into who we become. If Spirit removed every obstacle, would we ever develop resilience? Would we ever learn discernment? Here's a biggie. Would we ever trust ourselves? Because free will changes everything. This is probably the biggest reason I believe Spirit does not tell us everything. Free will. Every single person you meet has the ability to make a different decision tomorrow. Imagine I gave someone a reading today and said, "You are definitely getting married in 2 years." Well, what if that one person chooses differently next week? What if somebody moves interstate? What if someone decides they are not ready? What if life throws an unexpected opportunity into the mix? Everything changes. Life is not fixed. It is fluid. And that's why I prefer to think of many psychic impressions as possibilities, not guarantees. Spirit will often show us where we are heading, not because it is locked in, but because that's the direction we are currently walking. And we always have the ability to change direction. And sometimes Spirit stays silent. This one can really frustrate people. They will ask a question and I get nothing. And I mean nothing. And it's not because a Spirit is not there. And it's not because the connection is weak. However, sometimes there's simply silence. And over the years, I have stopped fearing those moments. I've actually learnt to respect those moments. Because sometimes silence is the message. Maybe the person is not ready. Maybe knowing would interfere with their own journey. Maybe they need to make the decision without any outside influence. Or maybe, here's one for you, it is simply none of my business. And do you know what? That can be difficult to accept as a medium. We naturally want to help people. It's in us. It's in our DNA. We want to help. We want to fix. We want to provide certainty. But perhaps one of the greatest acts of service is respecting what Spirit chooses not to say. And I've noticed something interesting. When people first begin their spiritual journey, the questions usually sound like this. Will I meet someone? Will I get the job? Will I move house? And they are all perfectly normal questions. But over time, those questions often change. Instead of asking when, people start asking, what do I need to learn? Or instead of asking, will I, they will ask, how can I become the person who's ready? that's a completely different conversation. And that's often when Spirit starts providing much deeper information. Now, let's talk about predictions. This is one of the biggest areas of misunderstanding when it comes to psychic readings. People will often say to me, but the psychic told me this was definitely going to happen, and it didn't. Or, Spirit said I was going to get that job, but I never did. Here is how I see it. I don't believe Spirit shows us a fixed future. I believe Spirit shows us a potential future based on where we are right now. So look at it this way. Think of your life like you are driving down a highway. If you keep driving in the same direction, chances are you will arrive at the destination that's ahead of you. But at any point, you can take an exit. You can make a U-turn. You can stop for a while. Someone else can cut across your path. There are countless variables. Our lives are constantly changing because of the choices we make and because of the choices other people make. That's why I always encourage people not to become attached to predictions. Instead, pay attention to the guidance, because guidance gives you choice. Predictions can sometimes take your power away. One thing I have become increasingly aware of over the years is that Spirit seems to guide more than it guarantees. There is a big difference. If someone comes to me and asks, should I leave my job? I don't believe Spirit is sitting there saying, yes, hand your resignation in tomorrow morning at 9:15. What I often received is something much more subtle. I might feel frustration. I might sense that they have outgrown where they are. I might get the feeling they are capable of much more than they are allowing themselves to believe. That's guidance. What they choose to do with it, well, that is entirely up to them. And I think that's really important, because the moment we expect Spirit to make our decisions for us, we stop taking responsibility for our own lives. And I have said this many times in the past. A psychic should not be telling you what to do. But let's imagine for a moment that Spirit did tell us absolutely everything. Imagine you knew exactly who you were going to marry, exactly when you will retire, every challenge you were going to face, every disappointment, every success. Would life still hold the same excitement? Would you still take a risk? Would you still be surprised by the little moments that make life so special? I honestly don't know if I would want that. part of what makes life beautiful is not knowing what is around the corner. It's the uncertainty. It's the participation. It's the growth that happens in between. If we already knew the ending, would we truly appreciate the journey? Sometimes Spirit protects us by saying less. This is something that I have reflected on a lot. Sometimes people ask questions that I generally do not receive an answer to. And again, it's not because Spirit is not there and not because I'm having an off day. Sometimes I simply believe I'm not meant to know. And over the years, I have learnt to trust that. There have been times where months later, I have understood why. Perhaps knowing too early would have created fear. Perhaps it would have changed the person's decisions in a way that wasn't helpful. Or perhaps it would have robbed them of discovering something for themselves. As mediums, it's easy to feel pressure to have an answer for everything. But one of the biggest lessons Spirit has taught me is that it is okay to say, I am not getting that. Or Spirit is not showing me that. That does not mean the connection has failed. Sometimes the message is in what is left unsaid. It's also like the saying, no response is a response. Now, I'd like to talk about my responsibility as a medium. People often come to a reading because they are looking for certainty. They are grieving. They are overwhelmed. They are standing at a crossroads in life. And that is a vulnerable place to be. As a medium, I take that responsibility seriously. But I'm not here to tell people what they must do. I am here to share what I am receiving with honesty, integrity, and compassion. Because at the end of the day, it is your life, not mine. Not Spirit's. It is yours. You are the one who has to live with your decisions. And I think there's something incredibly empowering about that. If Spirit does not tell us everything, what do they tell us? Well, in my experience, they remind us that we are not alone. They bring through evidence that our loved ones continue beyond this life. They offer reassurance during difficult times. They will encourage us when we have forgotten our own strength. Sometimes they validate a decision we have already been leaning towards. Sometimes they may gently nudge us in a different direction. And sometimes they simply remind us that we are loved. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that has always been enough. Before we finish today's episode, I would like to leave you with this week's challenge. For 7 days, I want you to pay attention to the moments where you are searching for certainty. Maybe it is asking someone else what you should do. Maybe it is pulling another tarot card because you did not like the first answer. Maybe it is asking Spirit for yet another sign. When you catch yourself doing that, pause. Instead of asking, what should I do? Ask yourself, what do I already know? Because quite often, deep down, we already know the answer. We are just hoping someone or something will make the decision for us. This week, trust yourself just a little bit more. Write down those intuitive nudges. Notice how they feel. Notice what happens when you act on them. And remember, intuition grows through use, not certainty. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this episode made you stop and think, I would love it if you could share it with someone who might need to hear it also. And if you are enjoying the Anything and Everything Spiritual podcast, don't forget to follow or subscribe where you're listening. It really does help more people discover the podcast, and I genuinely appreciate your support. If there's a topic you would love me to explore in a future episode, I would love to hear from you. After all, this podcast is called the Anything and Everything Spiritual Podcast for a reason. Until then, stay curious, trust yourself, and remember, sometimes the answers we are searching for are not found in louder messages from Spirit. They're found in the quiet wisdom we have been carrying with us all along. Take care, and I will see you all in the next episode. You have been listening to Lynda, the Psychic Pinup. I am a psychic and medium based on the beautiful south coast of New South Wales. If you'd like to connect with me, to book a reading, join one of my workshops, attend a live event, or to learn more about my coaching and mentoring programs, visit my website, thepsychicpinup.com.au. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram by searching The Psychic Pinup, where I share regular tips, insights, and upcoming events.